Hello everybody, welcome back to today's live stream. We're going to do a Shrek render here in today's live stream. We'll be creating this entirely in Blender, and then we'll render out different passes and then comp that over inside of Nuke. So here is the swamp, good old-fashioned Shrek swamp here. We've got a lot of modeling to do because we're going to remake all of this inside of 3D. I think we'll have to create some beautiful god rays here with some nice little sparkles of flies or bugs or whatever that are flying in the air. We got some trees and some reeds and some swampy swamps and more swampy swamps with a beautiful danger sign. And of course, the iconic actual tree with the house in the middle of the swamp. That is what we're going to be making, okay? So let's open up Blender so that way we can lay out our shot, make this all in 3D. Okay, let's set up the camera here. I'm thinking, what was the film made in? Was it like actually like UHD? Like 3840 by 2160? Or are we talking like 4096 by 1716 for like a nice scope? Just going to set up a plane now. This is the way I prefer to do it. I'm going to add a new window here, and then we'll just drag that new window over, put that in camera view, and then that way we could see everything in 3D here. But then inside of this window over here, we want to have our background image. So go ahead and click on your camera, add a background image, hit open, and then we're going to just go to our downloads. That's where I saved our Shrek Swamp PNG. I would probably say it crops it. Yeah, we'll just crop the top and bottom here. I'm going to set the opacity to 100%. And then the other thing I like to do with our camera is also set it up so that way our viewport display has pass through turned all the way up. Which I know my head just blocked that setting, but I like to do that so that way we're not seeing outside the 3D area of our world. We're only seeing what our camera is seeing. So that way when we go to solid view, we only see everything that is solid. And now let's go ahead and set up where this door is. So I'm just going to add a plane here. Just going to grab both these and line that up a little bit over there. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this and let's just move this over here. I think right around here is probably the end of his swamp house, right though? We'll just have this go all the way back to the back of his house. Yeah, industry standard is just like, I don't know. What it really means is, you know, what do studios use? And back in the day, I think industry standard meant more than what it does currently. Industry standard back in the day was like, oh, well, there's only like 2 studios that are kind of like running all of animation. So it's the standard of what they are expecting you to learn to use. And that's, I think, still kind of colloquially what it means. And if that's the case, then like, you know, Pixar, Disney, they're not using Blender. They're using Maya. They're using RenderMan. You know, like those are their render engines that they're working with. All right, I'm just blocking things out today, guys. Like this isn't going to be a crazy stream. We're just lining things up. Okay, we're going to add a little bit of character. Oh my gosh. Let's make that a little bit smaller. Add a little bit of character to our hut here. Do you guys really think aliens exist or not? Like, I mean, the government came out and was like, oh yeah, aliens are real, by the way. And then everybody's just kind of like, I don't care. And it's like, wait, pause. Wait a moment. Wait a moment. We don't care about that? We're gonna have to add a bunch of grass in to hide all of this. I don't know. Is this looking good to you guys? But no, the art never looks freaking good right off the bat. At least my stuff doesn't, dude. It's so much massaging. So much massaging. So that's the secret, by the way. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. You just have to work for one of those companies, and then all of a sudden your artwork just gets way better. This is gonna be our tree. I don't like. Do we even art? Yeah, guys, I think I'm a real pro. Look at this. This is like a beautiful tree. I mean, what can I say? I like really good at what I do. That looks good to me. If I were to have had an outhouse, it would look like this. Just trying to get the general shape of everything in this scene. Just kind of grabbing certain parts of this. That way it's not too straight. Man, we've been doing monkeys forever, though. I mean, they had the Planet of the Apes. The first ever Planet of the Apes was like 2009, wasn't it? I want to say. Take this whole thing and kind of just extrude it downwards. That looks pretty nice. But yes, Godzilla -1, good film. Just, was it, this is my question, was it on par with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Maybe the Oscars at that point had Marvel fatigue or something. Possibly, but also Napoleon. Insane VFX. Like, did you guys see that horse get blown up and like all of those visual effects shots of like the water and the boats and the whole armies and all of that jazz? Because in my opinion, that's also some great VFX. And is it okay to have Marvel fatigue? And then that's the reason why VFX didn't win, was because you're like, there's just a lot of Marvel movies. Is that also a consensus that you're allowed to say, hey, you know, we've just had a lot of Marvel movies, but Napoleon did everything for real and had no VFX. Yeah. 100% right. That's honestly why they didn't win. I thought their VFX was really good. But then when they did their whole marketing campaign about, you know, we did everything for real and all that crap, honestly, you shouldn't win. And honestly, I'm not angry about that. If you're saying that you did everything for real, then you did all for real. Stop going up for the Oscar nomination for Best VFX. That looks beautiful, guys. Marketing wasn't done by the VFX artist, but it sucks if they had... Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. The marketing wasn't done by the VFX. It was the director's comment, if I remember correctly. I believe Ridley Scott was the one that said that. And also, I think what he said was taken out of context. So I don't necessarily think it's Ridley Scott's fault also. I don't know. Is that a Warner Brothers movie? I know that Warner Brothers seems to have a huge problem with saying that things do or don't have VFX in it. I mean, just look at Barbie, guys. Barbie had no VFX. They actually even changed their Blu-ray crap to not see any of the VFX that was actually done in Barbie. Because there was no VFX done in Barbie. Sorry. I don't know why. Why would I ever say that they didn't totally key out all the green screens and everything like that in the Blu-ray behind the scenes covers and all that jazz? You often get this working in the industry about people saying like, oh yeah, no, I like them doing it for real. And you always get that. And I think that studios are tired of hearing that. So they end up just playing into it, really. And it's not necessarily their fault. It's more so the audience's fault. But what are you going to do? Blame the people that are actually paying the bills? Kind of creating like this stepped thing here. We'll smooth that out in sculpting later. But I think because of that, the studios are just like in this bit of a pickle. They can hurt the people that are working on the projects with them. But then it helps the film in the end of the day because audiences in general, they just have this like perception that VFX is bad. Also, nobody knows what VFX is or CG is. Like, it all means the exact same thing, right? Oh, VFX bad, which means CG in their head. That's what they're thinking. All right, we got ourselves a nice little sign. I don't know why it's so close to the ground. Okay, I need to, sorry, F2. And what I was trying to do here was press F3 and then grid fillet. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Back to F2. If you press F3 on your keyboard, it pulls up a menu and you can type in stuff, and then you can just press enter, and then then it just does the thing. But F2 and F3 also swap my OBS screens, so that's the reason why everything freaked out there for a second. There we go. We got ourselves a roof. Put the water level about right there, and then let's just scale that out. This probably needs to go a little lower over there. Yeah. Yeah, that way the pond goes all the way to the side there. The pond's going all the way to the side over here as well. It's that kind of like fill location there. An easy way to see this, by the way, is if you go to your view display options here, we could just set this to random. And that way you can see a little bit better where like that edge of that swamp is really going to hit. Let's grab this guy here and then whoopsies. We're going to turn off proportional editing here. Scale that guy down, and then that's going to go up. That's just like another branch. Normally I just drop in, you know, from a plugin these different trees, but because these are very specific looking trees that are very swampy in nature, we're going to want this to all be a little more custom. Just like roughly mapping everything out, and then we'll sculpt in some of the details here because this is all pretty basic, obviously. So if we then add in a modifier for this guy, I like to add in a multi-res, hit subdivide, and then I'm going to go over here into sculpt mode, and then hopefully we can get some nice looking sculpts in here. Oh, that's right, we are in the new version of Blender, and I forgot. Oh my goodness. This is going to be exciting. Not really. It's just the grab silhouette, grab 2D, grab. Let's just do grab for right now. Then I'm just going to try to shape this a little bit better, add in some more divots and whatnot. You know, it's a tree trunk. Nothing's perfect. Probably also want, so we're using a circle here. What we could do also is let's search for a solidify and then drop this in above the, we're going to do this above the multi-res. Wait, you cannot move a modifier requiring original data. It's fine. Let's delete that. Let's change this thickness now to be inside of our thingy things. That's how thick our wood is going to be. Let's go ahead and apply that and then add in a multi-res. Subdivide this sucker, and then now go into sculpt mode. And there we go. Just sculpt this to look a little better. Just go ahead and sculpt in some of these kind of like branches now that are kind of coming down. A lot of this is going to be under the actual like bushes and stuff like that. It's looking pretty good. Looks almost like a volcano head, not gonna lie. Let's go ahead and subdivide this again. Let's continue some of this displacement of this wood all the way up here. Like this, it should feel more like a wood aging pattern, like displacement almost on it. Well, this is all going to be under grass. I don't really think I gotta do too much of that. Let's keep that at 4 for our visibility of our multi-res. Next up, we're going to grab all of these guys, join them together, and then we'll just go ahead and also add in a multi-resolution. Subdivide it. Probably simple. Subdivide. Okay. This is where things are going to get a little complicated. It's going to be a nightmare, but I got to blend the two of these together. So we'll subdivide it one more time. Go into our sculpt mode here. And yeah, we'll start having at it. Let's go make sure our tool here is not using mirror or whatever. What's that option? Symmetry? Yeah, it's not. Beautiful. I feel like there's enough like the Blender Studio. It's like all they ever do these days is that 2D style. Like everybody's doing that. Am I the only one that's getting tired of literally everybody doing that in all the studios? Because they're like, yeah, that one movie was really popular, so let's now make everybody do it. Like, ever since then, they've had the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Puss in Boots, the new, I don't know, maybe it is a lot of DreamWorks stuff. DreamWorks is just doing it over and over and over again. I don't know. Did you guys see the new Shrek trailer that dropped, though? What did you guys think of it? I didn't get the outrage because I watched it before I saw any of the outrage. So I was like, wow, this looks awesome. I'm excited. And then all of a sudden I go online and everybody's shitting on it. I'm like, whoa, wait, what? Okay, let's try it this way. Let's do elastic grab this whole thing and move it up. Okay. And then we do they have, it's a snake hook. That's a pull. And then we pull like, no. Snake hook that downwards. Snake hook that downwards. Snake hook that downwards. That downwards. How's that look, guys? Creating ourselves, you know, some like, I don't even know. We're just figuring this out as we're going along here. I don't know what I'm doing with this branch. I think we really just kind of want one thing there. Smooth this guy out. We don't need it to have too much craziness. And it's just that one branchy branch. And we just grab it, create more of a base. That's cool. I like that. That works for me. Let's go back to object mode here. I'm going to take this boy right over there, duplicate him, and we're just going to rotate him around. Have this on the back side. Looks pretty solid. I mean, just kind of like filling things in here. Kind of just creating these big roots from this big tree, essentially, because this is just like the bottom of a tree. I'm going to swap this to face orientation, and all of our face orientations are correct on that. I will say we probably have to fix the face orientations on all of this. I don't know why I don't just like eternally keep face orientation on. I probably should. Probably also want to go into sculpt mode on this guy here. Let's first apply all transforms on him, and then we'll go into sculpt mode with the multi-res attached to it, and we'll go and do just a single subdivide first. This needs to be a lot smoother on the path going up the stairs here, which we always knew we were going to make that smooth. I was just kind of using the block method just because it was super easy to do that, but this right here, just have it go up. And again, it's going to have grass kind of on top of everything. We just wanted to have kind of like this smooth walkway. Really easy to do inside of sculpt mode by smoothing that out. There's nothing crazy as far as like sculpting is concerned on the ground. Like, it's just pretty basic. We might want more water here, which is pretty easy to do with like the elastic grab tool. You just grab this and then pull more and more of that down. That'll give us more of this like pond on the side there. And we could do that for both sides. So, you know, just grabbing this and moving it down. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. Just have like a bit of a shoreline there on that side, and then a little bit of a pond on that side as well. Yeah, we just have two planes here. One's below the other one, and that allows us to we're gonna scale this on individual origins. Pretty easily scale that inwards there. Okay, great. So there's our pond. We don't really care about what's this section over because the camera's not seeing that, so we're not going to model that for this render. We're mostly only worried about what's in front of the camera. I'm going to take this guy here, probably apply the scale on him, and then add in a multi-resolution. It's always fun to try out. I would say join our Discord also. If you're starting out, share your stuff that you're working on in the Discord. It's always useful to get some feedback, but also seeing what other people are working on. It's very encouraging to me when people share stuff in the Discord, because I also like to see what everybody else is doing and what's possible inside of Blender and how you guys are pushing the boundaries of everything. Just going to widen up this base a little bit more here and just having that tree trunk go up. Not really seeing too much of the side of it. Subdivide it again. It's good just to sculpt, you know, just like the rough big things first, and then as we subdivide more, you can add in individual kind of like creases. And of course, if you guys want these project files, I do put them up on my Patreon as well. After every live stream, I upload all my Patreon project files to Patreon, and you guys can grab them, use them for whatever you want. And we're not going to see anything over here, but I'm just going to add in like another little root almost that's kind of going up the tree. And then we just smooth out kind of like this top portion here. I'm gonna add a few twigs in here, and then let's work on this door frame because we got to 3D model some of the wood outlining on that door. Go back to mesh here. Add in a cylinder, do a multi-res on that. Subdivide it once. Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's cool. I think that's good. That's all we needed to do. Just grab that, rotate it. I don't know. We're making this up as we're going along, okay? You really think I know what I'm doing here? Because I don't. I'm going to scale that down first. Scale that out on the Z, and let's put this on the front of the doorway, and probably not have it go out as far. Let's do that. Okay, cool. Who did I say I thought should have won last year? It was Guardians of the Galaxy. I think to me that was the best one out of last year. But that's just my opinion. Although I just don't know that it's not like it was so clearly like Planet of the Apes level VFX. That's just on another level here, guys. All right, so we just grab that guy. Let's apply the scale on it. But we also kind of want a multi-res inside of this. Let's subdivide this a few times. Oh my god. Maybe not. What is going on with the... Let's just subdivide it this way a few times. And then if we add a multi-res in and subdivide it... Okay, that's not as bad. We just need to add more vertices, guys. And let's just simply go into sculpt mode here. And really we want to warp our wood just a little bit. Not a lot, not a lot. Change that strength, guys. Change that strength. We're just going to kind of warp everything a little bit. We got some bowed planks in here. That's fine. Object mode. Now we just grab that bad boy, rotate it, remove the multi-res, add in a new multi-res, subdivide it. Beautiful. Actually, probably let's do this first. Let's go to the front here and then scale them up about the width of the door. Let's grab this guy here. We'll just scale him up. Big ol' door frame kind of log. Love all this, guys, because you can't really prove that I am literally copy pasting this stuff. But I am. Because it's different scales, so you can't really tell. You can't. Do that. Do that. Looks good enough for me, baby. We probably just need to solidify the inside of this, so we'll delete only the edges. Edges. Delete that edge. Probably need to solidify it. So let's add a solidify in. And essentially we're just going to be subtracting inwards here. So that way there's a bit of a thickness to the building here. Go ahead and just apply that. But it's a mud hut, so let's work on that. This has like a bit more of a shape to it than we're used to here, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and add that shape in, like we purposely planned to do it, and probably just scale a lot of this out here. There's our window. I mean, honestly, we already did it, guys. We already did it. But let's see, this is wood here. That goes into like more of like a muddy dirt like texture. We could probably duplicate a lot of these panels that we created already. So let's do that because we're lazy. Go ahead and save that. Beautiful, guys. Beautiful. We are on our way to making a better Shrek farm, Shrek swamp, Shrek endeavor than DreamWorks. Okay, I like that for that. Let's go ahead and create some of these stones walking up the stairs here. We'll grab the first one. Let's put it right there. Let's go ahead and grab like a let's just make one ourselves. Well, we're just gonna use a cube. Wow, I'm like, this is lame. Especially since you can do this with like the rock generator so easily. I feel like what is going on here? We're back to the Stone Ages. We're back to the Stone Ages of making rocks. My scaling is just off on all of this. Let's just move that. Okay, wireframe that. Sure. Whoa, 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 whoa. There we go. We're kind of doing it. We're kind of making it happen, guys. We made our own rocks. And we're going to use this clay here. I think this needs to have a plus outwards. Okay. We are liking what we are doing here, guys. We are liking it. I'm going to apply the scale on this, and let's go ahead and add another multi-res. We are getting there, guys. We are getting there slowly but surely. One by one. Round the rabbit hole. Down the rabbit hole. We are going down the rabbit hole of what the tree... Let's just make this smaller. Like, we're going drop. We're going to follow that one, but do a different one. I'm going to do that one, but do a different one. different one, different one. We're going to do a different one, different one, different one. Subdivide that thing. And then now add in some more details on these different ones. Guys, I'm really good at sculpting muscular looking trees. That's all I'm saying. Beautiful, guys. Beautiful. We'll duplicate this, move this over to our porta potty output. I think what's funny about that is like I end up just always making the trees look super muscular. I don't know why. Okay, great. So now we got that. Let's scale it from the 3D cursor. There we go. Cover that whole side. Some nice paneling in there, brother. Some nice paneling. And then I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of these guys. And so now what we'd like to do is just grab the bulge tool, brother, and then bulge up some of these guys. I think this one here, for instance, if we go into it, let's grab the sculpt, grab the grab, put that off to the side here. Wonderful. Object mode. That all looks great. Oh my god, no it doesn't. It doesn't look great. I was thinking it did, but it doesn't. Let's use the elastic grab instead. Okay. Guys, you have no idea. You have no idea. It's just, we just grab all of these. It actually probably make it a little easier. Let's go into sculpt mode on every single one of them right now. Use the bulge tool on this guy. Can you not do that? I thought you could. Maybe that was a previous version of Blender. I'm thinking we're good. We're not really going to see the front. But let's go ahead and just duplicate everything here. And then, let's see, rotate it on the median origin, or median point. 90 degrees. And let's just grab that, kind of line it up as much as possible. We're not really going to see it, but it's there nonetheless, so that nonetheless, just in case. But as you can see, this is more of like the bottom edge of this tree. It's supposed to have more of like I guess a muddy vibe to it. Right now it's very boxy and does not come off as muddy. So let's go ahead and fix some of that up here, guys. I'm going to probably add another edge loop in, and then let's just grab this thing. I'll tell you guys a little bit about what I was doing this last week. Dude, I was so busy. I was over in Nevada working on a new movie, visual effects supervisor on it. And it was a great time, guys, except for the fact that it was freaking cold, man. Like, holy camole. It was snowing. It was 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which, what would that be in Celsius? I don't know. You guys do the math. It was below freezing and very cold because Fahrenheit is 32 degrees for freezing. And that was interesting. I'm not used to that, okay? I don't know if you guys know really where I'm from or anything like that, but I'm a California boy, which means that I like it to be nice and hot and warm and not cold. And that was rough. It's just not my vibe, you know? I'm not, you know, hey, if you guys live in a cold place like that and you like it, then go for it, you know? For me anyways, me and myself, I would say that that is not my type of environment that I like to be in. But it was fun. It was a good time, and I can't wait to share some more of that stuff that we worked on that set. Can't really tell you much about it yet, but it's going to be a really fun visual effects shot. And we already have a good storyboard animatic for that sequence that we created, and then I want to share you guys some of the work that's going into it as we get closer to it. But it's certainly a fun one. You guys will enjoy it once we get to it. I'm just going to make little stubs up here for this guy right here. That's looking good there. So we've got like these nice wooden panels on the front of our little swamp hut going on here. I would say we probably want to get some of these ropes that are tying, like, you know, like little knots and stuff like that. I think maybe the best way to do that is just using some kind of Bezier curve. We'll just go ahead and scale that in here. Change the depth here. So now we've got ourselves a nice little one side of the knot. Let's duplicate that. Nice, guys. Now we got ourselves like a little oh, that looks good. Honestly, that's good. I might even just adjust it slightly so it doesn't look like we just duplicated it. That's the great thing about Bezier curves. Very easy to adjust. Very easy. I'm going to take both of these Bezier curves and then let's just duplicate them over to the other side. That makes the most sense. Let's fix this guy here. Oh man, Bezier curves like with 3D modeling is actually kind of fun sometimes. Because I'm lazy, we're just going to duplicate this and put it on the ground. We're going to build ourselves a nice little porch here on the front of the house. Duplicate X 0.087. You know, honestly, 0.07 is the move. I don't even know why I wasted my time. I could just eyeball this thing. I saw Shrek, though. They released it in theaters again. What was it, for the 20-year anniversary? Like a few years back. It was fun to watch in theaters, but then it also kind of like makes you realize, like, oh man, I did really enjoy this movie as like a kid, but it really wasn't that great. It was great and charming in its like own way, but I think it's like one of those things. I guess this is what I mean by that. The film, if it was made today, no one would like it. Everyone would say it would probably flop, actually. And I think that's the case with like a lot of movies that are like pretty nostalgic for people. Is like it was the time period. Maybe it was the first of its kind or something like that as to why it was good. Like Shrek was so different than the Disney films that were coming out at the time that it, you know, was shocking, really. And I think that's why it did so well, was because it was just a different type of humor. It was a different type of animated film. Everything that was coming out at the time was all just like princess animated films. And, you know, this was just so very different from the rest of that. I really like that. Let's start working on some of these bushes leading up this hillside here. And the way to do that is we could do it using like a particle system or something like that. Or we could literally just use Botanic, which is a great plugin to get, guys. If you guys don't have it, then I definitely recommend it. That is what we potentially can do. And then for these kind of like viney things, what are these called? Like moss? It's just moss inside of the forest. We can probably use like a cloth sim or something like that as well to accomplish that. See if we could get some reeds. Do we have reeds? Reeds are like one of those things where maybe we have it inside of plants. We don't, guys. What am I gonna do? Oh wait, we kind of have this. What is this? A Hypercatus witiki. Every botanist is screaming and crying right now. How can you not pronounce the Heltarchian sempervarians? Dude, I am pronouncing it. And honestly, like, you guys are just learning that this is the correct way of pronouncing these things. Definitely not the correct plant. So we'll keep looking. Over here, maybe. You know, some Caltodonius sevronis on the hillside over here. I think you can really get away with some of that. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that's probably pretty close. That's probably pretty close. We'll just we'll scale that up. This is probably the closest thing we've hit so far. So I'm going to duplicate this. Just gonna try to make this somewhat thick over here. Let's see. We're gonna go to HDRI Haven, and we're gonna find ourselves some nice HDRIs. We're gonna try to match essentially the lighting here. See if we can find ourselves a forest. We can always add in some of our own lighting. We're just trying to get like the general color vibes going on. So let's do this one. Let's open up our world settings now, and we're going to change from color to an environmental texture. And then let's just pop in our asset HDRI. Load that guy in. Yeah, let's we're just looking at color right now. I'm going to open up we'll just load this as an image, and then let's change this to a shader editor. We are using cycles currently, by the way. And we'll swap this to a world options. And then I'm just going to say, let's change the saturation and hue. I think I'm not a fan of the color palette. Let's do this one. That's looking pretty sweet. And then, yeah, the shadows are kind of coming this way. So we're already hitting the right shadow direction. Now, here's the thing. We actually have a lot of shadows going on. Or a lot of light hitting us. But that's because there's nothing over here. So there's a couple things we could do. We could actually put in some trees and stuff like that probably the easiest way of going about that. So let's go ahead and delete this and open up some coniferous trees. And then voila, we're going to get some nice shadows that are coming from off screen over here. That's going to cast some light for us. Probably do something like scale that down. And we're just going to start to pack out this area, all right? So I'm not as much of a fan of like how deep these shadows are going. So let's go back over to our shader editor. I like the color, but I don't like how like horizontal these lights are, or the sun is. So let's go ahead and we're gonna turn on. There we go. And that's where the sun is. What I need to do right now is move this HDRI to be a little bit more vertical going up, right? So we can rotate that right now using this mapping control. Honestly, I was just eyeballing it, but that looks pretty good right there. So now we can go ahead and just grab everything, drop those back in. I like a little bit of light hitting this sign here. That's what I'm really trying to adjust there. But that's all of our lighting gobo, and you can easily turn on and off this collection if you want to. We do have this grass here. Let's select all of our grass Cortadilla Salona, okay? As well as our grass Carl Forrester. Now I'm going to grab all of that. Let's just throw all of that under our grass section up here. I don't know how that got confused with everything else. But as you can see, it wasn't rendering that stuff. Now it is. So let's go ahead and add that back in. I'm going to turn off that right now. So we're only looking at our 3D render of what we've got going on. And then inside of our picture here, we don't really see too much inside of there, but we do see something. Right now it's completely black on the inside of our hut. So let's go ahead and fix some of that. I might just add a single point light or something like that. That's more off to the side over here than not. And then I'm going to create a new collection. Let's go ahead and create a new collection. We're going to call this lighting. Okay. This will be all of our additional lightings that we create, not the actual HDRI itself. This allows us just to keep things super organized. I don't want it to feel like he's at home, like just like ready to cook you a nice dinner of eyeballs, guys. It's like this is not a friendly place, okay? So he's probably got more of like an orangey fire going on the inside there. And then we'll just bring down the wattage a little bit of that. You know, it's a fireplace off into the corner of his hut. We go to visibility here. Let's see, viewport. Just swap that to like bounding box. That might make it the easiest. This is another trick you can do, guys, is just selecting these and then going into your object settings and swapping this over to just the bounds option for your display as. Makes it so you don't have to see a bunch of floating trees. Okay, now we got to get the swamp that's also behind everything here. There's a lot of like these bigger trees. Let's see if we can find anything like that. Just gonna put this all the way back there. Let's just move that off to the side. Okay, and then there's a couple things I'd like to do. Maybe first, let's. I'm gonna create a new collection. We'll call this camera. And then I'm going to move our current camera into that collection. Let's go ahead and just grab that real quick and then move that over to camera. And then inside of our camera collection, let's go ahead and create a new empty plane axis. I'm going to set this near the door. I would say our focus really should be on the door. So that's what I'm going to do is set that there. And we'll call this focus. Inside of our camera now. Go ahead and select it, and let's set depth of field and turn that guy on. And then we could select our focus object as focus. And then that way everything back here is going to be a little bit more out of focus. Might even, yeah, 1.2 might be fine. The one of the issues is that we actually don't have a scale properly set up here. So whatever we do is not going to be like very accurate. I'm going to create a new collection now, call this ref, and we're going to enable this selectable option. I'm going to make it so that everything inside of here is not selectable. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create a new plane. And I'm going to delete everything except for this one vertex, okay? And I'll say even selection of cursor, so that one vertex is there. Now, we need to make this the height of like an adult man or something like that. Or actually, let's do this. In Shrek's cabin, how tall is his front door? Shrek's front door has been seen in Shrek movies, is quite large, but its exact height is not specified in the films, are based on visual estimates and comparisons to the characters, who are relatively large. It appears to be around 10 to 12 feet tall. The door needs to be big enough to accommodate Shrek, who is around 7 to 8 feet tall. So what we're going to do is we're going to extrude this on the z-axis exactly 8 feet. That's 8 feet, which means that that doorway is way too small. You see that? Like, this is way too small. That's like 2 feet, right? Shrek is not 2 feet tall. He is 8 feet tall. So what we need to do now is we're actually going to make that completely unselectable. And then I'm going to set the cursor to about right here. And then let's select our 3D cursor now. We're going to select everything. We're going to scale to this 3D cursor. So that way everything stays about the same size. And then we'll just go ahead and scale this guy up. We're going to scale it to about 8 feet right there. Maybe a little bit bigger again. You know, like we can get away with that. But now our whole thing would have scaled up. Lighting will stay exactly the same, but now our reference is correct. So when we right to selectable here, we select this guy. Oh, that's right, we can't select it. This guy right here is about 8 feet tall, and so is our door, which is about the height of Shrek. I'm gonna make sure that it's not visible. We can make it visible here, but let's not make it rendered. That way we don't have to worry about that later. But that's our reference of our size. And then I would say this guy back here, we can now no longer see him. And that's because our camera can only view things so far away. So if we go into our end clip settings here, let's just add this so that we can see up to 1,000 meters away. And then now we see this tree. And I would say we probably want this tree to be something like that. Move it down. And then we're currently on a 50mm lens, which is okay. Let's turn our depth of field now to like a smaller value. And then honestly, now we just take this and we just scale it and keep moving around, guys. The other thing is that there's too much light hitting a lot of that stuff, so we might actually want to select some of our work that we did over here, duplicate that, and then just move that up. And then at this point, I might actually grab a regular plane, scale that guy up, especially for this stuff that's way back there. This plane's going to go under our lighting gobo. That way it gets a lot darker the further away it gets. But really, we're just going to put this plane right in the way of everything. So that way any of these trees that are back here are still going to be visible, but they're going to be a lot darker. Let's create a new collection now, and we're going to call this BG, okay? And honestly, all these trees could probably get placed in BG, but for right now, I'm not going to be too worried about it. I'm going to add in a new Bezier curve. Grab that, scale it up, move that back here. Now to make this more visible, I'm going to add in some geometry to it, so some depth. Maybe that's a little too big. It's fine. Cool. So there we go. This is our like a vine or something like that. And we're going to want to create some nice little swings or so. They're kind of happening through this forest here. George of the Jungle style. All right. I like that. Let's do add in another plane. Okay. Scale this guy up though. I'm going to move you all the way back here. And this is like the way background of the forest here. Go ahead and save that. And then this plane now, it's going to be part of this BG, of course. And then this is going to be called background. Just call that background. And inside of our material, let's go ahead and add a new one. And this is kind of like a green, you know, a little darker maybe. And then let's see. We're gonna add in another tree type here. So that's good there. And that's just going to be a little bit of a spread. Since we like modeled our own tree here, I'm going to try to make some of my own branches going on this thing. I'm going to make the brightness level of this very dark. And then we're just going to start to duplicate this around a little bit. Go ahead and just push this down as well. I'm just not going to 3D model my own branches. That's just not going to happen. So, how's that looking? It's kind of like a nice little like layered system where we're seeing some of the bark of the trees here before it gets darker and darker as it's going back. Probably don't want this one to be... Let's see what the brightness level is on this. Let's see. Make that darker. Kind of prefer it being a little bit darker this side. We want it to have like this slimy green kind of effect to our pond here. Let's change the roughness now. We're going to go a little bit less rough on it. This is going to create some issues for us. But luckily, we don't have to do too much. I might even make it a little more reflective. I almost think that we could speckle in some dirty dirts, you know what I'm saying? We can try that. Let's put a vertical split on this. Go to shader editor now. I would say let's swap this back over to object mode. Here's our principled BSDF that we've got going on. I'm going to add in like a noise texture. We go ahead and view that. You can kind of see what it's doing. Change the scaling here to something more random like this. And then let's do an RGB value that's going to be this green guy. Let's duplicate. Let's duplicate it. We use a mix color node here. And this one, we're just going to make this a little more brown. And this is green. And then this is going to be our noise texture. If we go ahead and view that, you can kind of see now that it's creating like this change. Let's do add some more detail in there. I might add in a nice color ramp before it goes into our factor of our mix. And that's way we can just get some real nice crispy edges to this. So now we go back into this. I might even make this a little bit darker. Make the green particle stuff that sort of sits on top of the water. Definitely can do that. But yeah, we just basically take that whole texture. Now we can just plug that into the base colors. That way some of it's going to be green, some of it's not. Would say maybe we want to have some of it be more rough, so we could take this same color ramp here, and then we can just plug that directly into the roughness of this thing. So that way some of it is not as reflective as other parts. You call it algae? Yes, algae, definitely. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's see. Let's find a texture for it. Probably want to search up algae. Honestly, let's do this. Because this as small would look more like algae. And we're going to need to build a new kind of like part of our shader here. So this is just for our reflective swampy material. But we're going to want certain parts of it to actually have that like algae effect on it. Right now it's just kind of like plain white. Honestly, if we were to remove that, you can kind of see like this. We're going to be putting algae in like certain spots. So let's open this up, find our texture, open up our diffuse, probably do normals as well as roughness. And now if we just duplicated this principled BSDF, plugged our diffuse into base color and our normals into normals, but we have to convert it to a normal map first. So let's go ahead and do that. Plug that into the color for that. And then our roughness gets plugged into our roughness variable on our principled BSDF. We go view that. We can see exactly what this looks like. It's that. But we want the scaling to be slightly different. So I'm just going to add a texture mapping node in here. Plug this into the vectors of all of our images. And then we're going to add in a new value here with a high value of maybe like 4 or something and plug that into scale. It's going to make everything really small. So now we've got like this really small looking algae stuff kind of everywhere on this. The bigger this number is, the smaller everything is. And obviously I think we're going to want it to be pretty dang small, like that 10 right there. Now, this and this, we can do a mix shader. Plug this guy into the top value, this guy into the bottom value, and then we just take the color from our noise texture and plug that into the face. And then now we're going to get kind of like this algae everywhere. I might even swap these. I might even duplicate this. Let's go and view this real quick. We want this to be very white, and that looks pretty good. We'll plug this into the FFC here. So now you're having kind of like this algae effect that's going on. We want it to probably be a lot more harsh on the edges here, so that way it's not fading too much, because that algae is not supposed to feather as much as it's sitting on top. I might also, let's duplicate this whole noise texture here. And if we plug that into this FAC and we go and view it real quick, we really want the detail to be very high. So the higher the detail is on this, the higher the detail on the edges is going to be. We change the roughness as well to be maxed out on the roughness. That's how like algae is going to grow over top of the water. And then, so there you go. And that would be a lot of algae. So let's just change that slightly. Going back out of camera view here and just beautiful. So then that gets plugged into the FAC of the mix shader. So then now we go look at the mix shader. You're going to see all this algae kind of growing on top of our swampy effect that's going on here. Next up, I would probably say that we want maybe curves, RGB curves. And let's go ahead and just darken that up a little bit. I think having the algae be a little bit darker. I'm going to change this to a constant. And now this will be a lot easier to adjust. I don't know why I didn't do that from the beginning. Add more or less just by adjusting this value here. Say let's add some muddy ground in here. So let's create a new material now, and this is going to be called mud or dirt. Let's just call this dirt. We're going to do dirt. Let's call it ground actually. We need to have some spots be muddy, some spots be dirty, so drier and not dry, and like all of that stuff. So if we go to terrain right now, we're going to find our initial option. So this is going to be the main walkway here. And then obviously near the water edges and stuff like that, we're going to want it to be a little bit wetter. There we go. And then let's go ahead and just start importing some of these textures. And pretty basic. Just going to grab the main diffuse. This one we will use the displacement on. We've got some normals, we've got some roughness. And let's go and organize this a little bit better now. So our diffuse we could plug into base. And then our normals, our roughness, let's plug our roughness in. And then our normals as well with another normal map. That just gets plugged in through the color there. Now, a really easy way of seeing how well our texture, let's just load this guy in. See, our dirt is way too big. Also, there's some problems, guys. And so let's use this texture mapping thing. Let's change this to object. There we go. It's a little better. Very repetitive, you can tell, which is not good. You don't like repetitiveness. Let's plug this vector into here. This is where a lot of the hand painting is going to come in. I think it's very easy to apply textures inside of Blender and just get things to like look good right off the bat. But then it looks very CG, and the reason why is because people stop at this stage. I think it's very important, especially with grounds and like terrain type stuff, is to not just use a regular, constantly repeating effect, because otherwise it looks really, really like feels like it's being duplicated, which it is. And that's what we're going to try to avoid. Right now we've got like this brown texture that kind of just goes everywhere, but there's no character to it. There's nothing, right? So let's go ahead and let's do a bump node. Plug this color into the height, and then plug this into displacement. Let's use another image texture here. Open on that. Let's create new, and then we're going to call this round mat 1, and we'll do 2048 by 2048. I'm going to hit new image. Now on this guy, we're going to add in another mapping node here because we don't want to use the same mapping as before. We're going to use the UV image. So now if we go ahead and load this, it's just going to be a black image. We can go over to our texture paint option. I'm going to say with our mat here, I'm going to load in some surface imperfections. You guys can grab these over on the Patreon. I uploaded this whole thing over there if you guys want. But essentially, surface imperfections, if I just use a regular mat, it's just going to paint it in like a straight line. And that looks pretty basic. But we can hit new as a new texture. Over here, load in our texture, but find our image that we have. So our surface imperfections, I'm going to use a 1K. Let's find something like dirty and smudgy. I don't know, let's do smudges 5, looks pretty cool. And then under our tool settings here, we just want to make sure that the texture that it's actually using isn't doing anything, but the texture mask is. And now we can go ahead and paint in some stuff. Now that's going to duplicate, so we want to go to our stroke and then make sure our stroke does not have, it's got to do like random orientation. Where's that at? We've got jitter here. Oh, right. Rake and then random. All right, this is looking pretty sweet. I'm liking this. Let's just gonna make sure this is whiter on the edge. So we hit image, save this image. Let's go and save this over into our assets folder. Let's go back into our layout options and then save that. And it should load our mat in on our screen over here. We're gonna use this mat to basically determine between what is wet and what isn't. Okay, great. So now we've got this ground mat here, and we've got our main dirt texture, but we want to have more of like a muddy dirt texture that we're transitioning between. So let's go ahead and find something like that. We want something that's a little bit more like wet in nature. We got this brown mud texture, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to extract this. And then once we have that, we can go ahead and open up our Blender project. Now, we already have a full Principled BSDF texture that we created of the dry dirt. And so we're just going to go ahead and duplicate that downwards over here. The truth is, though, we can delete all of these textures because we're going to be loading in our own textures, okay? Just fill that up. So we got a Principled BSDF as well as the same exact coordinates that we were doing before. And then inside of our textures, let's bring inside the diffuse. Probably going to not want the displacement, but we are going to want normals. We're going to move that down there. And then we're going to want our roughness as well. And let's go ahead and line all three of these up just like we had before of our previous dry dirt texture. And then this time we're going to use this new vector plugged into all three of these. The mud can get placed into that base color. The roughness will then go ahead and get placed in there. And then, of course, our normals gets placed into there. Now let's just go ahead and make sure that this texture looks correct. So we're going to actually just view this diffuse right now, and we'll see how much it's tiling. That's crazy. Too much tiling. All right, so I'm going to use a value node here with a smaller value, like a 0.2. Let's change the scale of this guy. Let's look at a little bit closer, maybe a little larger. That's pretty cool. I like that. It is tiling quite a bit still, but we're not really going to see it. It's because we have this Principled BSDF of both these guys, and if we use a mix shader node between the two of these, I'm going to plug this into the top, and then this one into the bottom. Our mat that we created, our ground mat here, we're going to use this to plug this into the FAC of the mix shader. So now if we go ahead and go and view this, we will get dry dirt in some areas, and then the darker, muddy dirt in the other areas. And that's going to break everything up quite a bit. It's really nice because it's going to blend between the two different dirt options. That's looking pretty good, guys. The ground there going into the swamp. If we want to make it so that maybe the ground dirt is a little bit more visible, you could add in a color ramp here. Go ahead and grab that real quick. And then we could just make this a little more contrasty. So like just grab this side here and then just go whop, you know, just as that gets more contrasty, the dirt is going to become more visible throughout. So we're just really growing that up. If I just mute that, you can see kind of what I'm doing here slightly is just making the dirt move more inward. Probably get to the wood material here, the bark material. Let's see if there is any bark texture already created. Let's go ahead and select this this back trunk here that we're going to be doing next. But, you know, I am thinking that looks pretty good, guys. I like the ground that we've got so far. Let's hit new, and then we're going to call this main trunk. And then with that, we're going to start to work on this Principled BSDF here, okay? So let's grab our first asset that we downloaded for the. It's supposed to be the outside is the Japanese camp pour. Okay, a very specific tree that we got going on here. Let's go ahead and load in this texture now. And grab the diffuse. Let's grab some normals and some roughness. And then let's look at this main diffuse here. So, yeah, that's what I was kind of afraid of. Using the UVs might be a little difficult. Go here to object. The other option is, let's see. Let's go to our modifiers here. We're just gonna apply our multi-res. And then when we actually go into vertice mode here, I'm gonna just select everything. And then we're gonna say U, and let's just do smart UV project. I'm just gonna unwrap it. And we're gonna use UVs for that. And let's change the value here. A larger value. Plug that into scale. It's pretty close. Let's change the rotation here. Oh, that's pretty good right there, that direction. I think the scaling is pretty close to it. I might make this a little smaller. Okay, so then that's going to give us most of the outside of our trunk there with our mapping. And then let's just go ahead and plug this into the rest of the vectors. You know, so we've got our roughness here. We'll plug that into our roughness. Base color, of course. And then our normal map. Let's search for normal map. And then plug this color value into color. And then this normal map directly over into normal. But on the inside, we for sure want it to feel more, I guess, like the inside of a tree trunk where it's a little bit more damp, you know? And that's where our other material is going to come in. So let's load in our other texture. We've got the Trident Maple Bar. So probably just selecting this. I think we're going to use the same mapping as before, but we'll see. Probably load in the diffuse. Let's load in the normals and then the roughness as well. And our normals, let's go ahead and load that in there. Our diffuse, base color. And of course our roughness. And with all of this, we definitely need to use the exact same vector mapping as before. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go in the correct direction. And I do like how dark everything is over here. And actually I like the scaling too. That works really well. So now we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to create a new texture image. And this time, it's going to be just a regular UVs, guys. Regular UVs. And let's hit new, and then we're going to call this main trunk, and then underscore matte. And we're going to do the same thing we did before by going over to texture paint. And this time, we're going to be painting on our tree trunk. Okay, let's go ahead and save that. I think we're pretty good with that one. Go back over here, hit image. We gotta make sure we hit the save on that image. And let's go back to our layout and see how that loads in. Very nice. So now if we use a mix shader option, we've got our two shaders already created. So we just have to plug both those guys in and plug the matte into the FAC. And there you go. Let's see how well that works. That's really nice. So now you've got like kind of like that darker inside to it. I might even, yeah, let's paint a little bit more. I'm kind of liking it, you know? That's looking a lot better. You see how that's breaking up the texture quite a bit and just adding a little bit more detail to the whole thing? That's what we're going for. Now we really want to add in some like algae and stuff like that on top of everything. Might even, let's add some of these main trunks in here. I'm going to just apply all of the multi-resolutions while we're at it. Let's see what this ground look like on this. I almost think it should be main trunk. It's hard to tell based off of the image that I have if it's wood or if it's like I don't know. Let's do that. Let's see. Let's duplicate this and call this main house. And then let's change the scaling here. And honestly, instead of this this texture here, let's use for this one an ambient occlusion node. And if we view this ambient occlusion node and then use like a color ramp to make it a little bit more extreme, we can really, we're just trying to get like everything that's under the trunk a little more visible. Then we use this plugged into our FAC instead of the main trunk mat that we did, which we could hand paint a lot of this, but I mean, using an ambient occlusion is going to do the same thing we're really going for here. I'm going to say just invert this. There you go. That's pretty cool. Let's tone it back a little bit. Nice. For this, let's do a... Honestly, that's pretty good right there, guys. Now we've got these planks here to do. Let's select this also. I'm going to apply that. And then let's find ourselves our main trunk. We're just going to apply this to these last few things. What we're going to have to do, I feel like we're going to have to brighten up quite a bit of stuff. I noticed that just like checking out our reference here, he hits a lot more sun in the center of the swamp here. And so we're going to want to try to do something similar to that. One of the things that we can kind of do here is we can add in some atmosphere to the entirety of our shot that we're working with. So I like to just right in the middle of everything, really, just add a cube. And sometimes I'll just put this, like, especially on these like still renders that we're working on, the camera's not moving around or anything like that. So I like to just like sit the cube directly over top of the camera. And then we can grab just like this side of the face here. And as long as we grab this outwards, let's just bring it all the way to back there, maybe. Just scale that guy up. Essentially what we're doing now is, and we'll probably want this to go all the way to the back. So now we're completely inside of this cube. This cube, I'm going to create a new collection because we're going to want to turn this off later, but I just call it effects, drag that cube into it. This will just be our fog layer. Okay. If you guys seen my streams for a while, you know exactly what I'm about to do. I do this on like pretty much every full CG render I do, even if it's just a tiny, tiny little bit or a lot, I always do it. And it's because it just makes such a big difference, guys, to your renders. I don't like to, you don't want this thing to be bigger than it has to, because the way volumetrics inside of Blender works, the more you have, the heavier it is on your system. So I try to just get the areas in which the camera is going to see. Okay, so I'm going to hit add new material here. And if we go into our material settings, you'll see that it added a principled BSDF. I'm just going to remove that real quick. And I'm going to add in a nice scatter, a volume scatter node. And we just plug this directly into volume. Now you see that it updated over here. Now it no longer looks like a black hole that we're in, but now just like a lot of mist. I'm going to change this density here to be quite a bit lower. And then if we increase this intricacy, this essentially is going to allow the amount of like kind of like volume rays that are coming through like trees and stuff like that. And then this intensity here, we might make even a little bit lower. We want it to be so low that you could barely see it. But what we are doing is going to be getting like these kind of like light rays that are going to be passing through the environment. So let's try a little bit lower even. Yeah, so many fond memories though, honestly, of like fog machines and stuff like that. I feel like that just was like so much of my childhood was just like, oh dude, we can use a fog machine. I actually in college I then ended up bought one because I was just like, you know, you can do so many things with them. Let's increase this intensity here. We will turn off glossy diffuse. We'll keep volume scatter on. Probably going to need to increase the actual environmental light that we have going on here. So we're using an HDRI right now, and I think it's just coming in the wrong direction. Should be like if I point it this direction here, specifically maybe like this direction. Let's go to our environment real quick, and then I'm going to swap it out. So let's duplicate the world. So this is going to be a completely different world. And change the surface here to, let's remove this. There we go. So that's just going to be black. And then this sun here, if we just increase, let's get the shadows to line up with what we want. There we go. Now we're getting kind of a little bit more of those volume rays in there. I like that. Look at that. We get some nice rays in there. I'm just rotating this around until I find something I like. Okay, now let's just adjust this here. I want it to be a little bit more visible. Okay, and then this guy right here, we increase the strength a bit. And then, oh, that's kind of ew. Okay, cool. And then now we swap this back to the other world option. See what that looks like. Let's make this a little bit more green, I'm thinking. Let's change the saturation of it slightly. Okay, great, guys. I think lighting-wise, I'm pretty happy with this. This is going to drive my computer crazy if I try to do the rest of everything with this layer turned on. So I'll go ahead and just turn off the effects. Having it in its own collection makes it really nice to do that. Next up, let's just start doing some textures. We got to do some wood textures here for a lot of these cabin here. I think we probably just work on one procedural texture first and then kind of go from there. If we want to try to have different variants of how that wood is interacting, we can do that, of course, as well. I'm just going to open up a new Chrome project here, and then we'll just search for HDRI Haven and go to our textures, add a normal map in here. And I think we're probably going to have to remap our UVs here. Let's go ahead and just add texture coordinates and a mapping in here and then plug all of our textures into it. And okay, same with our displacement here. We're going to want the same mapping node into it, and then probably a bump texture that we can then plug this color into the height and then the normals into the displacement. Okay, and so there's our wood texture. It's pretty close. I might want to change the scale of this. So let's change the value of this to a higher value and plug that into scale. That'll scale our entire texture down probably a little bit more. It's a really easy way of just like scaling your textures by using a value node. This is all looking pretty good, but if I started to copy this over to our other planks here, one thing we'll notice almost immediately is that the texture looks the same with everything. So I'm going to do that, and then we can make some adjustments to our own liking. I think we can link materials. So all of these should be using this wood texture. Perfect. So I'm going to do object info, and going into this diffuse is probably what we're going to want to do here. I'm going to create a color ramp. We'll change this to constant. Let's add a few in here and change this, the roughly brightness values of this. Probably, yeah, let's do full black on that one, and let's do that. Maybe even make it slightly green. I don't know. We can add a few more. Also just change this to maybe, let's just change it to ease, so that way we actually have infinite different values. And then this random we're going to plug into the FAC here. And then this we'll just use a mix color node. And if you plug your diffuse into one of the options here, probably just even plug it into the B. It doesn't really matter if it's A or B on this particular one. Then the color of this color ramp, I'm just going to use a multiply. So now if we go ahead and look at that texture and then use the multiply node, you'll see that it's multiplying different amounts to all of these. And then if we use the factor here all the way upwards, that way it's multiplying 100%. So it's multiplying a color value over top of your diffusion texture, and then that gives you a bunch of different values. The higher to 1, the less likely it's actually going to be changing anything, versus the lower to black, the more it's going to be multiplying it against 0. It's just basically math. We could add in a couple more, honestly, if we wanted to. Okay, great. Now all of this then, this multiply just gets plugged directly into the base color. It'll be a lot more subtle, but now we've got a lot more variation in the way our wood is, so that way it doesn't feel super repetitive, which it is. It's just one texture, but now it's like a bunch of different textures essentially, and that really helps us. Probably gonna copy all of this. Let's do the same thing here. We're just gonna select that, press Ctrl L, link materials, and that way we are using the same wood texture throughout. I mean, if you think about it, he's probably chopped down like 1 or 2 trees to kind of like use as the entirety of his swamp. All right, looks like we need to add in a bunch of fur. It's not really fur, but you know what I'm saying. All the way around here. Now there's a couple ways we could do that. We could probably go in and find individual plants and do that ourselves, which could be a way of doing it. Or we could do what I'm probably going to do, which is let's add in like a cube of some kind. And I'm going to add in a subdivide surface. I don't know how I feel about the new Shrek. I don't necessarily dislike it. And I've said this before. I didn't even notice it at first. Like, who out here actually noticed it first before anybody told them that there was a problem? So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a bit of area in which we want our grass particles to grow. So we're just going to create a mesh of that area, and then we can then customize it to exactly what we want. I'm going to probably grab this bottom piece here and just push that down. And then, of course, we're going that way. I'm not really seeing back here, but I think I want to get it regardless. I think this wood bit goes through it, so we might want to extrude a new plane there. And we'll do the same thing over here. So grab again this face. Well, actually, I don't know. Does that go under? It doesn't. So this one right here, we could just have it go over top of it. Yeah, and then we just we'll wrap it all the way around here. So rotate that. Throw this under our old collection for our layout. And now let's go ahead and open up Botanic. I think this is probably going to be the easiest way of doing this. If we open up Botanic and then we can use our scatter node, you guys can use whatever scatter plugin that you guys prefer. I like Botanic just because it's got some great assets inside of it. And then now we just have to find ourselves like a nice swampy... Let's see, is decorative the answer here? Decorative might be it. Let's try decorative. Let's click OK. And then obviously our grass is way too small, so we will adjust that as well. And that's pretty easy to do. You just adjust the scale. Now our problem is going to be is that all our grass is going upwards when his grass is more random. So we can adjust the randomize function here. Definitely increase that as much as you can or want to. There's a lot of customization that can go on at this point. And then probably phase as well. I mean, I think the phase option probably is good. To scale randomness, I really like to not have too much consistency going on here. And then at this point, it's just increasing the numbers. I don't really want to change the density or anything like that here. So yeah, let's just increase the numbers. Let's just make this like 10,000. Then all we have to do is just hike this number up. 5,000. A lot of grass particles. Probably too much grass if you ask me. So we can fix that. Let's change that to like 2,000. And then, yeah, his walkway here is getting completely lost. So I'm probably going to grab like this whole wall over here. Let's just do that. And then I'm going to use our tool as much as possible. Just try to thin this guy out. It's looking pretty good, guys. Now let's fix this under area over here. I want it to be a little more dead or less green, if you will. So, not quite sure that I can do that through the scatter node here, but we certainly have the ability to adjust that over here on the actual texture window. Looks pretty good to me though, guys. Okay, now I'm going to select our ground that we have here, and then we're going to just do the same exact thing that we just did, okay? So we'll go ahead and save everything so that way we don't die when it crashes. And then we'll use ourselves some nice weight paint here. And we're just going to weight paint the areas in which the grass exists. So it kind of like goes down here and then off to the side. Okay, perfect. So there's our weight paint. We'll go back over here to our object mode. And then I'm going to go ahead and now add in a new scatter. So we'll do this exact same scatter as before. It's the decorative grass. I think that just stylized wise works the best. Now it's going to add grass everywhere. And this is where now we're just going to add in the density to our group here. And then probably length as well. And then we're going to just change the amount. It's got a ridiculous amount. Probably need way less. Actually, like literally way less. We'll just go like a really small amount. And then, yeah, we'll just max out the randomized direction. So that way we're kind of getting everything going into random directions. We can phase it if we want to. I might now increase the number of particles that we have and then decrease the scale slightly. Okay, we want the texture of this to be the same, so let's just make sure we do that. We've got these guys here, and again, probably just search for BQ grass. We'll do the same for this one, BQ grass. I like that. That lighting works quite well now too. Okay, I think this light is a little too bright back here. Also give it a nice little tinge. Oh, I like that. Okay, I'm going to select all of these ground options here, or these planks. Then we just select our one plank over here. I guess we can't really see it anymore, can we? I just want the one most edge plank, please. You press Control L, link materials. Save that. I'll hide this for a second. I just need to grab these guys. We'll just move those out. Something like right there. And then we'll unhide everything. And now we still have those walkways, but they're positioned a little bit better. They were really buried into the grass. There's a bit like kind of like some viney stuff going on here, right? So if I do, let's see, spawn asset, we've got vines, right? Ivy. It's my own tree, guys. We don't need a fake ass tree that they want us to use. We could do that ourselves. I like this side a little better. Okay, let's add this wood texture to these guys over here. Just do Control L, link materials. That way we have our cabin over here. I'm just gonna do the same thing. Link materials. Okay, let's put some pine cones down. I feel like that's the answer. It's one of the answers to life, is just putting some rocks that you don't eat down. Let's see what we got. We got some rocks here. Maybe something like that. We're not limited by tools anymore, more by creativity. You know, that's very true. I think also an interesting, and I don't know if this is like recent or if it's just people in general. What do you guys think about this? Do you think that people are lazier now because of how easy everything is? So because they didn't have to work for anything in the beginning getting started, that now if anything is remotely difficult to do, that you immediately just like push it off and then don't want to do it? You think it's just split between types of people? That's possible. I'm gonna do a wave texture here to create like a rope effect. I'm personally happy that we aren't in the 70s or 80s where none of the tools have been existed and it took thousands of days to do a basic cutout of actors. You think lazy people exist back then? It's just not as much as they do now, or noticed it more often. Or maybe they just weren't able to get as far. Yeah, I don't know. I guess my thought also is that, you know, I think maybe, I don't know. I don't know, guys. I don't know how I feel about that. I do think, though, that what's interesting now is that you can be lazier. I don't know if lazier is the right word. Maybe it is. You can be lazier and I think get further. If you were lazy back in the 70s and 80s and you wanted to do like CG VFX, no way. You'd give up. Like you're right. It'd be thousands of days for a single shot. Use this as our rope texture. I think we like this. Let's do that. Add in a color ramp here, guys. Get it a little more pronunciated. And then now we're just going to get like another texture. So we'll do this one here. Let's make it even darker. Use another mix shader. Plug this into... Doesn't really matter. Factor. Swap these guys out. Let's see. We get some wood in here. Plywood. One of the bark. Nothing crazy. I mean, it's just like a sign. Main trunk. Yeah, it looks fine. It looks fine. Guys, the laziness has won. Need to write something on it. I gotta write danger, don't I? Okay, danger sign. Swap the texture paint here. Let's just see if we can draw. Can we draw, guys? Go to camera view. I don't need any of this fancy crap. Beautiful. Okay, that looks good. Go back to our tools over here. I'm just going to remove it from the texture. We don't need a texture. We want the texture mask. Select that guy. And then I got to turn on raking. Random and rake. There we go. Let's go ahead and save this though. We'll save this under our assets folder as danger sign. Thank you. And then let's go back over to our layout here. So we currently have this danger sign. I'm going to use a principled BSDF with it set to red, I believe, is good. Mix shader this stuff. Boom, into the FAC. And then this can go to the top. And then our red goes into the bottom here. And then now we can go ahead and view that. This should update inside of our texture over here, which you can't see it because it's out of focus anyways. But it is there. I want to point out that it is, and it looks pretty good too, guys. Okay, I'm going to use a color ramp, and let's just make this pretty. Yeah, that's good. It's good. Maybe a little less so we get some of that texture coming through. Bring up the contrast of this black a little bit more to add in a little bit more detail to like the paint texture feel. Maybe not too much. I need my skull head, guys. So this dude right here, I do not know what I just drew, but we're gonna go with it. I think that works for me. Okay, so we've got this skull head here. What we need to do now is now duplicate this red ink. We're gonna make it black ink, or just really dark red. Maybe it's dried out blood, guys. It's a long time ago that this happened. Plug that guy in there. Plug this guy in here, and it's just a layer. And again, same color ramp probably. Okay. Couple extra plants back there, I think. Like back here. Then guys, we are pretty freaking close to rendering this out and then comping it. These stones back here don't have any textures in them. Stone walkway. And then we grab some kind of stone, right? You know, honestly, that looks good enough. We plug this directly into the base color. I am probably going to use the same multiplication method that we did before. So let's do that. I'm going to just real quick add in a normal map here so that way we have the base texture. And then let's use a color ramp up here with the object info. And then plug the random value here into the FAC. And then from here, I kind of like, we'll just keep it from 0 to white essentially. And then we'll use this as a mix color node and just multiply. You'd either do that or do add. I think add could also work. You're just adding values of 0 to 1. So that way it's actually not making it much darker. Factor is set to 1. I'm an idiot. Okay, and then this gets added to the A. Okay, beautiful. And then now we just go ahead and just multiply this. And then it's 0 to 1 on the multiplication, guys. I'm doing two things at the same time, and I'm like completely messing up both things. Okay, back to camera view here. Can we not see that? Probably not. Just lift up the curves here. I just want this texture to be a little bit brighter. Where are we at? That's all texture. Probably want to add some bushes back here. We could still do that. Material, material, material. Let's just add in all of that so that way I don't have like these white cables going everywhere. And then let's see what it looks like with our effects right now. I added this light back here. I was like, what just happened? Holy moly. I don't know what that light is, but we do have this guy right here. And then what we can do, because he's casting so much like bloom inside of our lighting, let's go and turn off volume scatter for it. I think I might want to add some more grass. So if we go to weight paint right now, we're going to go to our paint tool Make sure it's on mix or add, one of the two. And from our camera perspective here, let's just add some more here. Might subtract it as well, but I just want to add in a bunch below the camera. And then overall, then we just increase the number. And then let's add in big old plane. And this plane here, we can go ahead and turn on our particle mode. So let's add in particles, hit play. There you go, you got yourself a bunch of particles. Now what do we do with these particles? That is a good question. I'm gonna say let's go to 60 here. And let's just have that go all the way through. We'll go ahead and bake this. And now with our particles, let's go to render view and then swap this out to an object. Now we can change this with whatever object we want, but we're going to create our own object. So we're going to create a circle, rotate it 90 degrees, fill that circle. And this circle right here is going to be kind of our prefab, essentially, for the rest of our particles. So now if we go select our, our plane that we have, we can go back down to our object, and then we're going to select circle, which only have, oh, I guess we have two. And voila, you got a bunch of circles. And we're just going to keep the object rotation. And as you can see, we've got like a bunch of little dots in here. And that's because it's basically taking this circle and then placing it everywhere. All we now have to do is add in a material and kind of create our own effect that we want to have. Now, we can kind of keep like these like little white dots. Essentially, it's like little dust particles essentially inside of our scene. And I might also do, let's see, let's go over to that circle and then go to render views. That way we can see what that's going to look like. Make sure effects is turned off. And then now let's create a gradient texture. And it's going to be a spherical gradient texture. And all we have to do now is just position this to be centered. And then we take ourselves a color ramp and just extend the black area to be a little bit more. Then now we just have to center it even more, guys. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to create a little bit of a feathered edge here. Okay. So it's like almost a circle, but then it goes off to black there. And now what that gets us is if we add in a transparent BSDF, and then we add in a mix shader node here, all we have to do is have this plugged into the FAC, the white plugged into the bottom value here. And then as you can see, the top value is black. All we want to do is plug that into the transparent into that. It's going to create ourselves like a nice little like white feathered edge particle essentially. And if we want to get even fancier with it, we can add in like a noise texture. Just go look at that noise texture real quick. See, it's got some values on here, so that way it's not just flat solid. Just plug that into your base color, and then voila, you've got yourself a nice little particle of fuzz, essentially. And that fuzz can then be translated into the rest of your scene. So if we go to render view here, should already be there. Our little fuzz that we created will then propagate to our particle system, and then now we'll have little bits of fuzz floating around our scene, and that helps create some nice dynamicness. You could do this in 3D, or you can even do 2D assets of this. So we could actually have comped this inside of Nuke if we wanted to. But since we're doing this here anyways, I figured this could be a nice little added touch. Let's go ahead and get out of render view. And I'm just going to zoom in on some of these fuzzes. I just want to see how good they look inside of this scene. I'm almost wondering if we want these to also be somewhat transparent, because you could control how visible they are also through this. Okay, we'll save that, and then let's just talk through some of the render settings here, and then, we'll go from there. So first of all, I'm using my own color management settings. I've talked about this in previous videos. I am going to want to make sure that it's selected on ACES CG for the sequencer. That's the only thing I do prefer to do, so that way when I bring it into Nuke, I am also using ACES there as well. Next up, I'm going to change this to OpenEXR multi-layer. That's going to allow me to embed a bunch of EXR channels directly into the actual output file, which is going to be extremely useful, especially when it comes to CryptoMats and things like that. And speaking of CryptoMats, let's go over to our CryptoMat tab here. We're going to want to enable objects and materials. I like having both those. And then I think for this, maybe normals could be nice. I don't think I really need anything else. I might do a mist. Mist could be good. And that's a 0 to 1 essentially versus the, maybe we want Z instead. No, we'll do mist. I'm going to do both because I don't know out of Blender which one you should have. I want to test that out. Okay, and then next up, we're just going to go ahead and then set the render location. So for us, that's going to be our streams folder and our latest render. I'm going to save this into our out, which our numbers are different here, but there should be a 3D out folder. There it is, 3D out. And then we're going to call this Shrek render, I think. Or actually even better, we'll just call it version 1. So VO1. And then today's date, I find works really well. 25032. Let's go ahead and just save that there with an underscore. And then overwrite is totally fine. For color management, we will override and just ensure that it says ACES CG here. ZIP compression is totally fine for what we're trying to do. All of those render settings should be good. No motion blur because there's no motion in our shot. Transparency, I'm gonna uncheck transparency, and because that can only be a bad thing, honestly. It's like the only thing it could do is show transparency, which we don't want. Cool. All of that is good. There's actually a new white balance option down here. That is super cool. Didn't know I got to mess around with that. Okay, cool. So anyways, those were my render options. I went and sent that out. Now we go ahead and import that directly into our Nuke comp. So today we're going to be compositing this shot. Now there were some lighting things that I didn't quite get that I wanted to get that we're going to go ahead and do here. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and select our folder and then select the 3D output folder and then our EXR. And then we can go ahead and import that. Cool. So now we have our EXRs. Now, if we go and view it, I'm just going to walk through everything here because some of you guys might be a little bit newer with the multi-EXR workflow. Well, first of all, in our RGBA channel, we actually don't have anything here. But if we select our RGBA channel, we can see that there's a bunch of other layers. Now, this is where the multi-layer EXRs come in. Everything is just built into this one file rather than having a bunch of different files that we're importing. And I've done that before, actually, where sometimes like Houdini, you'll get a beauty layer, but then you'll also get this matte layer, this, and they're not multi-layer EXRs, it's just a bunch of different EXRs. And so right here, you'll notice that we have CryptoMat materials and CryptoMat objects. We have mist, we have noisy, we have view layer normal, and then we have the combine. Now, if I select combine, you'll notice that this is actually our render that we created inside of Blender. And this is the layer that we want on our RGBA. So I'm just going to go ahead and then shuffle that channel directly over into our RGBA. And so that way our RGBA channel is now viewing our combined. But you'll notice that our image is pretty flat, and today we're going to be comping it. We're going to make this look way better. We're going to make it look more like our reference image that we have here, and at least try to get some of that magical feel to it. First, let's go ahead and check out our lens distortion. Now, I could import a lens distortion from another chart that potentially we already have. In fact, maybe I will. So what I've been doing recently, and this actually works with really anything. So for instance, we're testing this out with drone footage shots. And I think this works great for this type of stuff as well, where we're shooting stuff in CG and then you want to remap your kind of like CG shots to have a bit of distortion on them. And not just eyeballing it, because I think in the past what I've done is I'll just do something like this and then like I'll just create some like distortion that's not real. And that doesn't really help you at all because you're just eyeballing it and creating kind of like this spherical distortion ring on your footage. I imported these right here. Now, this are different distortion charts that we shot for a previous film that I worked on. And I labeled them right here. These are all for the A cam. We've got 36mm, 42mm, and a 72mm lens. Now, these different lens distortion charts, if we go view them, actually have a very interesting different amount of distortion to them, and this is really cool. I mean, it's pretty expected, obviously, if you know much about lenses, but it's just how much the camera lens is distorting your footage based off of which lens is on your camera. And they're using the exact same camera. I believe this was on a Sony camera, Sony Venice, I believe is what they shot on. And so it was a Sony Venice of a 36mm, 42mm, and a 72mm. And it'll change the amount of compression that you're going to get on your shot. And if we open up our Blender scene, we can actually see what lens that we are quote unquote using. If we planned this out beforehand, we could actually use the exact same lens that we are using right now in order to get the exact same amount of distortion that we want. And let's see, right here, we used, let's go ahead and select our camera. And inside of your camera settings, we used a 50mm lens. Now, I don't have a 50mm, but I do have a 42. So let's go ahead and plan on using the 42 because then we know for certain that it's at least the closest to what that 42 would be. Now, when these distortion charts were created, they actually didn't film them exactly perfect. There was a little bit that went off the edges here of your distortion chart. That's something to watch out for and fix, and not do on your next one. But in this particular case, it'll get us pretty close to what we want to have. But yeah, let's get into actually using these distortion charts. Now, right now, you'll notice that the resolution of our distortion right here is 8632 4552. Now that is an anamorphic massive 8K footage that that we are going to try to be mapping our shot to. But that's an 8x4. So if we went over here, you'll notice that we're doing 4096 by 1716, and that's kind of like a de-squeezed version of an anamorphic shot. In fact, actually, we can reformat our shot, which we're going to need to do so that way it matches our anamorphic setup. So let's go ahead and create a new format here. We have the 86 45 52. So if we just select that, what it's going to do is it's kind of just going to crop it where it's supposed to be and leave everything on the top and bottom just cropped down. We're probably going to have to live with that because I didn't plan to do this before. I'm sorry, guys. The other thing we could do instead of doing that, which I believe is what I'm going to prefer to do, is make sure that instead of it going to width, that we're doing it to height. And then we're going to say black on the outside so that way we're not getting any weird distortions. We can very easily see where the edge of our image is. Now, when we do that, now, what ideally we're going to be doing is going to be distorting this in a way where our original footage right here is now mapped to the distortion of our A camera footage. And what we need to do is export that distortion from our distortion chart. So I'm going to go ahead and add a lens distortion chart on here. So we'll do lens distortion, transform, and then do analyze, and then we're just going to go ahead and detect it. Now, actually, I just want to view this so that way we can actually see what we're doing. I'm going to reset everything, and let's go ahead and hit detect. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to draw a bunch of lines in to select all of your boxes of your distortion here. And then we're just going to hit solve, and then that should just undistort everything so all of these squares are perfectly aligned and they're all completely straight. And you can kind of test this, just by drawing a straight line inside of digital. This is what Blender is doing right now in order to create a distorted version of your film. Now we're going to want to also make a transform here, and then probably scale this up, but we'll get to that in a moment. So also I'm going to save our project files here so that way we don't lose any progress as we're moving forward. Now, with our distortion chart here, we can actually literally just copy paste this and then paste this distortion chart down here. Now, this is still undistorting our shot. So you'll notice that our footage is kind of distorting inward. It's creating like this inward bow effect that's happening on our shot, which is not how our lens should be reacting to what's going on. So instead, we're going to change this to redistort. And then that's going to go ahead and redistort it. Now, there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind. First of all, when this is undistorting it, it may potentially change our resolution here to a different size, which it's not. So I think we should be good there. And then the next thing that we should do is change our input format here to the format. So instead of doing auto scaling, it should be input. And then that's going to redistort everything to our input. And now scale to input format. I think we're just formatting this to our exterior output, again to our 8K output. Beautiful. Okay, so now that's going to redistort everything. And then now we're going to want another reformat node here. And then this time we're going to reformat it to our 4096 by 1716. And then this time we're going to use height as our option. And then probably scale this up slightly as well. Although I guess we'll do that after the fact. Go ahead and just, oops, sorry guys, add the transform after so that way the everything is lined up here. Then I'm just going to scale this to about right there. And then let's just use a crop here. Now this isn't a perfect way of doing it. Ideally, I would have rendered it out with the correct aspect ratios, but I didn't. And so here we are. But what we're doing now is essentially we're just distorting everything so that way it's actually using the correct distortion of our other lens. We're going to lose a little bit on the top and bottom here, but from the sides, you should notice that the sides, when it's distorting, we're not losing too much. We may lose a little bit because of the cropping factor, and that's where you kind of need to pay attention to that inside of your actual Blender comp. Now, let's see if I want to get a little bit more headroom here so that way we can see the top of our wonderful swamp that we've got here, guys. But I mean, we have to kind of cover for that as well. So I want to potentially, I think we should be fine with that. Okay, great. Now, this is all of our distortion that we're kind of doing to our shot to give it that more of that kind of like realistic effect going on. The next thing we're going to need to do, that's all of our cropping and formatting and loveliness. I'm going to just move down from there. Usually I do my distortion last, but I think this time we'll just keep that up ahead. I'm going to make everything a little bit more contrasty than we had it inside of Blender. Just probably get something more like that. It's a little bit moodier and in the direction that we kind of want that. The next thing I'd like to do is I do like to add a bit of glow to like an overall amount here. We're going to just change our tolerance values here. What we're going to try to do is add in a little bit of this extra kind of like lens flaring that you would normally get on a camera. So we don't really want all that much of the amount that we're getting, but we do want something there, right? So let's just change the brightness here and the saturation. We're really trying to do, and then I'll just say effect only. We're trying to essentially get a tiny bit of it that we're going to be plussing back over top of everything else. So if I use a merge node, you know, we could just merge this back on top. And then this time we're going to use screen for this. And then I'll probably change our mix value here to like a 0.2. Something very subtle that you can barely see. Something very subtle that you can barely see, but it's going to add a little bit of atmosphere to our environment. So we're going to go ahead and we just added in a little bit of extra screen. Now we're going to do this again. I want to get kind of like the smaller amount of glow, like a really small mixture of amount of the glow. So that way we can blend that back in. I would say probably the tolerance on this one, let's just go make that quite a bit higher. We really just want the highlights now, right? I would say maybe around like 0.4. We're really just kind of getting those highlights of our trees and everything like that, just to help blast everything up a little bit nicely. We have effect only, and I'm going to just change the brightness here as well. We'll just do 0.7 on both of these. But now if we go ahead and just merge that back over top using our screen option, now We're just kind of like bringing those highlights in. You see that? Like it's that extra kind of like little just bit of like a lens highlight that you're going to get from that like sunny day. And of course we can just mix that down so that way we're not getting too much of it, right? I'm going to make this 20. Let's change the 20 on that. I mean, let's just go one step further. I'm going to add a blur node in, set that to like a 300. And this is just going to blur everything here, right? And then we just need to then merge that back over top. So just do plus, okay? And this is going to kind of create kind of like a bit of a hazy effect to everything, though that's too much, right? So now we're just going to want to mix that down. Just gives it a nice little environment to everything. Let's get some lens, like kind of like God rays in this thing. You know what I'm saying? We need a little bit of God rays going on here. I like to use some roto paint. I'm actually thinking it's going to be better to use this. Yeah, this definitely will give us more control. Let's do, we're going to pre-multiply that. And then I'd like to do a constant here. And we'll set this to the 4096 by 1716 that we are doing. Then I'm just going to use a color picker tool on maybe that color. And then we could merge this with a mask. And then this merge can then be merged back over top of our shot. And then now let's go ahead and just do it this way. I was going to hand paint this stuff, but I don't think that was going to work out too well. Let's use a slight bit of a blur. Beautiful, guys. That's a God ray right there. Okay, we're gonna make sure that these are the same angle. So beautiful. Let's do one more like right here. Not too concerned about them being in front of these objects because we're going to use crypto mats in a second to subtract it. And then now let's use another roto paint tool and we can hand paint some of these as well. Great. And then I'm going to use a crypto mat, I think. Let's use some crypto mats to subtract these. Might actually change the saturation of those lights here in a moment. But yeah, let's use a crypto mat here. Now here's how the crypto mats come in. It's like a bunch of, it's 1,000 different freaking things, right? Well, we know that we're going to want our house here as well as our tree here to be in front of those like light beams that we're going to have. So we're going to just do individual objects, I think. And then let's go ahead and select, you know, that tree, this trunk. I think we should be good. I don't think it really goes behind this. Just select as much of this as we can. Okay, and it did select some of the trees back there, but I'm not too concerned about it. So what that's going to give us is a mat that we can now use to essentially, I'm going to use that mat to subtract. I actually might even just take a merge of this right here. Let's just merge that. Take this crypto mat here. We'll just move that all the way over here. And then I'm going to make a dot here that just hides the input. And then now we're just going to use a mask node and boom. Now this merge, non-existent channel. Oh, whoops. Crypto mat. What am I doing? So now we've got ourselves our house. And then we just have to take this guy and we have to merge it back over top of everything. Okay. And we can kind of control the amount that we want all of this stuff to be, right? So let's go ahead and merge this here. And perfect. Just need to have auto alpha selected. Beautiful. Just in case. And then now, yeah, you can see like that tree's kind of going in front of it. This tree is going in front of it. And that's really sitting in the background now. So we're only adding in kind of like those light beams that are happening in the background. Now, I think we still want a little bit more contrast to what we are having. We were losing a little bit of that. And I'm going to also add in a tiny bit of a crop. Not a tiny bit. I don't even know why I said tiny bit. We're adding a crop, guys. We're adding a crop in the background here. And then, yeah, I mean, I might also add a merge here as well before we, let's see, wait a second. Let's, it's right here. Let's add a merge here. And then that happens before this. This is getting a little messy. The reason why is, I want to control the amount these God rays have. This right here will allow us to control the visibility of these God rays. So now we can just tone that back a little bit. So we're at like a 0.7 instead of like a 1. You always know the client's going to come and be like, oh, we like those, but they're just a bit intense or something like that. I don't want to use the regrain node, although I will say that regrain sometimes is the best way of getting that. I'm gonna try another cryptomat here. So let's do another cryptomat. Let's move these layers down. And you can group in cryptomats by materials, objects, and collections. So if we wanted to, we could have had all of our collections be separated. So all of your trees be on one, whether they're foreground, background, or whatever. Let's use regrain. I always have to do so much tweaking to get this to look like how I want it to be. So I want the grain size to be smaller, something like that. I could live with that. I want to make the kind of shadows a little bit more swampy and the background a little bit more greeny, which would be swampy as well. So let's use cryptomats again. Let's go ahead and select maybe it's material. We certainly want these back trees back here. So if we select that, should be for the most part the correct trees. Select the bark as well. Beautiful. Let's use a grade node here. Let's go view that real quick. Now we're going to use the same mask of that cryptomat. Just plug that directly in. And let's go ahead and get that to look a little bit more swampy if we can. A little darker, a little more greeny, maybe even more in the world of blue. Let's use a saturation node plugged into the same thing. Desat it a little bit, kind of bringing it down. I think we're gonna want this though to be before the lens flaring. So let's add that back in up here, and then make sure that the cryptomats are now plugged into the correct thing. So now that we're not changing the God Ray color, because the God Rays have to happen over top of it. Okay, great. The other thing is the distortion is weirdly not lined up, and that's expected, I suppose. So let's see, this is coming from that makes sense. So what we want is actually to copy this, and after the cryptomats are done, let's actually do some pre or post processing. So it's after that cryptomat is done, and then let's do the same thing with this guy. So just create the same distortion effect that's happening here, and then there we go. Whoops. And then now if we select our grade and saturation, that line should perfectly line up. It's good for me. I like that. That lighting now works quite a bit better in that area. Might even add a little bit more. I like it. I want our swamp to be greener. I think that's also something that's just really jumping out at me right now. So let's use another cryptomat here. Let's get that swamp. Yeah, I think object should be fine. And we'll just use the exact same distortions that we're doing on everything. Probably should do... I know that if you try distorting stuff before it goes to the cryptomat, it actually breaks the cryptomat, which is why I've been avoiding doing that. Let's use another grade node here, and we're going to try to get that swamp effect going on. And then now we could adjust just like the swamp. Thinking we're going to want it to be a little bit darker, but then let's also change the gain of this to be a little more green. I like that. And then yeah, let's just mix this back so that way it's not completely overtaking it. Let's see, let's do another cryptomat. See if I just swap that to material. Let's do that. Let's just do those. It's the most in the distance, I think. Yeah, let's do another grade node up here. So wait, there's this. Yeah, let's do this before everything. And then I'll copy the same settings. Beautiful. But essentially what I wanted to do all the way up here was the trees that are off in the most distance. Let's just make those even darker. And again, we could make those more green as well. So just changing the gain of this, have a little bit more green mixed into it. I'm also going to say on the outside edges of a anamorphic kind of shot, you're going to get a little bit of vignetting. So let's do that as well. I'm going to use a grade node here in mixture with we'll do this before the graining happens. So that way it does give a different amount of grain. But let's use an eclipse. I'm just going to outside circle this to something like that. And then we'll just make sure that's pre-multiplied. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to use a grade node here with the mask inverted and then just kind of bring down those outside edges. And when we blur this quite a bit, like a 300, should be pretty subtle, but it's there. Just getting a nice vignette. And I don't like it to be too perfect when I do vignettes. And in the same breath, we also actually kind of want to defocus on those outside edges as well. So we're going to use that same matte, and then let's do invert for the matte, and select bladed for this, and our aspect ratio should be 1.3. And we're just changing a slight bit amount of the amount of defocus that we're getting here. Should be decently visible to kind of like this. Not super obvious, but it's kind of there. Maybe we don't want the same amount of blur, so let's select a different option and then change that blur to like 100. I might even go and erode this. Let's do a fast erode to dilate this. There we go. And then if we blur that, should be pretty nice. I like that. Then let's just add a tiny bit of bloom to it. We're just really blurring those edges there. I might even lessen the defocus amount. That's good for that outside defocus there. There's a couple compy things that I would like. Let's first of which, we're going to add in some of our own shadows going on down here. Swap that to RGBA. We'll go ahead and then also blur this. Essentially, I want to just bring that area down a little bit. We don't blur quite as much. Create more of a shadow. Just giving it a little bit more differentiation on the ground. I just want it to feel more worn in that area. I don't know. Does dirt feel worn? I don't think dirt feels worn, guys, but I'm going with it, okay? For all of our nodes that we're doing here, let's do another crypto matte. I'll just go ahead and put this on the outside edge. Wait, it's not too much in the way. And what I want to do is select the grass. I feel like the grass feels a little too deserty, and I wasn't able to get the asset to be exactly what I wanted, but I knew that we could change this later. So if I select our grass now as our material here, and then we go ahead and just do the exact same distortion that we were having before. This new grade node that I just added in, let's use a mask selected to it, like so. And now, go back to the bottom of our stack. Our grade node here, we can just make this a little bit more kind of like swampy green is what we're going to go for. So let's change the gain value here. And then let's make it a little darker, I think. And then I want to change probably the saturation as well. So let's actually just hide that mask option, but that way we don't have lines going everywhere. Let's change this saturation now to a little less saturated. And actually, let's reset that and just change the values through this. I think this is going to work a little bit better. What I'm trying to do is really match that reference photo that we had. I can bring that reference photo in, I think, because that's what I'm really trying to do here. So if I just bring this reference in, and then let's just tag it as the correct color space. So we'll do output 709. Color swatches also would work for this. Essentially what I'm trying to do, let's go ahead and just reset everything here. Let's set that value to 1. And then what I want is the grass. Let's move this closer to the bottom of the stack. Just move that all the way down to here. Boom. And there you go. I'm going to erase the saturation node that we had. And then, okay, this grade node right here, we want these green values. So let's just set the white point of this to the green values, okay? I'm going to set the black point to like, I don't know, the dark shadows of those green values, okay? So now we've got kind of like this gray to yellow-ish green color that we've got going on here. We need to do the same thing, but now on this reference photo that we have, all right? So we're going to say, hey, set the gain value to whatever our highlight green that we want to be is. Let's just say it's that. And then our lift value to whatever the shadow of that is. These will probably be pretty close. It's just getting that to change. Now you can see what we did there. Now if we go ahead and change the value that we're trying to map the gain to, I probably want to select just kind of like this overall highlight there. And there you go. It was already so close. Just needed that extra little push. The background, still not a huge fan. I kind of want to go a little bit darker on it. So let's just lift that up a little bit more. Let's go ahead and throw a crop here at the end as well. So in comparison to our initial input, that's what we got from Blender. And this is what we did in Comp. That looks pretty good, guys. I like that quite a bit. I'm gonna merge this. Let's just do a bit of a subtraction. And I'm just gonna kind of do that number, I think. Let's do an RGBA on that. Blur that down like 300. Let's go into this guy and then just say invert selection. And then let's make this smaller. What we're really trying to do is create some variance here inside of our God rays. If we set that to 100. Yeah, we're just erasing that inside there. Again, select that, probably bring it up. There you go. So now that's going to create kind of like these God ray effects going on. Going all the way down the line to there. And this merge right here, so this is that's all set to 1. Yeah, that's going in front. Beautiful, 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 guys. All right, let's add another ZD focus to the overall image here. Put that value to a very small value. We're just going to make our image less sharp, because that's another thing, is that sometimes the Blender renders are just way too sharp. And if we just add a nice little defocus in, that'll make it quite nice, guys. I'll include this distortion chart as well for you guys, but this is pretty solid. I think that's going to be it. Honestly, today was a quick stream. I mean, we really didn't do much. I mean, we're mostly just comping the stuff that we brought in from Blender, but one of the problems I had with the stuff in Blender was I wanted to have more atmosphere, but that was kind of like whitening everything. I knew we could get the effect that we wanted inside of Comp, so I wasn't too concerned about it, but I think this is going to be the final image here, boys and girls. This is our Shrek swamp render. Yeah, anyways, these project files will be located over on the Patreon if you guys want to access these. Grab them, use them for whatever you want. I'm going to also upload these distortion charts as well, so that way they can be used. But alrighty, guys, hey, you guys have a good one. You know, make sure to stay creating and making new stuff. I mean, share it also on the Discord. Baragon has been doing that. Hasselhoff, you've been doing that, and it's been great. I've been loving to see the stuff you guys are working on. It's always fun to see that. All right, guys. Peace out. You guys have a good one. Bye.